Hare Krishna. Good morning, dear devotees from Sridham Mayapur. This is our daily adventures in Srimad Bhagavatam. It's better. And this is our 38th session of what we're calling Meeting in Kurukshetra, and our 5th part of discussion about Uddhava meets Nanda Maharaj, which I think will have at least 6 and maybe 7 or more. So we'll say a few prayers before we begin. Gora Draganya Gana Gota Goloruharam Goranga Gudatama Gopyara Kopa Briksham Gopala Gada Ratidam Yati Singha Gora Govinda Deshikavaram Satatam Namami Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Shaivanarottamam Devyam Saraswatyam Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Vede Ramayane Shaiva Purane Bharate Tata Adavante Chamadye Cha Hari Sarvata Giyate Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangumam Gayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinatadanam Paramananda Madhavam Paramananda He Madhava Pajunga Luchi Makaranda Se Makaranda Panakori Anande Bolo Hari Hari Harinka Name Vandavela Parikori Be Chakadolam Se Chakadolanka Paraye Manamo Rahu Nirantare Manamo Nirantare Rahu Viranti Hare Krishna Holy Jiva Jai Hare Krishna Holy Jiva Mote Uddhava Radha Dava Mote Uddhava Radha Dava Mote Uddhava Radha Dava Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya 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 Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Good morning, dear devotees from Sridham Mayapur. This is our 38th session. We're calling Meeting in Kurukshetra. And today we're going to speak about the personified river of ecstatic parental love, who's also known by the name of Yashoda. So we left off in our last session speaking about how Krishna is not attracted by awe and reverence. In the Adi Lila chapter 4, text 24, Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami describes the words of Krishna, which Krishna's thinking. Mata more putra bhave kore na bandhan Atihina gyani kore lalana palan balo Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Mata More, Putra Bhavi, and her Putra Bhav, and her she's thinking that of me as her son, Krishna says. She's thinking atihina jnani. She has this idea that well, what's my son going to do? If he doesn't eat, he's going to die. It's been, Mother Yashoda feeds Krishna 8 times a day. And she's constantly disturbed because he's not eating enough. Kore lalana palana. She thinks that she has to lalana and palana. She has to nourish and protect me. And similarly, Krishna's friends in Vrindavan have a very special mood. Sakka Sudha Sakye Kore Skande Arurana Tumi Kom Bodalo Tumi Amisam Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Krishna's friends are in Sudha Sakya. Their love for Krishna is purely in friendship. And Kori Skande Arohana, sometimes they climb on his shoulders. And they say, Tumi Kon Bhodolok, Tumi Amisam. What kind of big man are you? You and I, Tumi Amisam, you and I, we're equal. You're not such a big man. Srila Prabhupada described in one lecture in Los Angeles in 1973, he said, we offer obeisances to Krishna with awe and reverence, but no one comes to Krishna with a rope. Krishna, you are an offender. I'll tie you up. That is a prerogative of the most perfect devotee. Krishna wants that because he's full of opulence. Krishna is Anur Aniyan Mahato Mahiyan, greater than the greatest and smaller than the smallest. That is opulence. He says those who are thinking to first of all analyze Krishna, to ascertain whether or not he's God, Prabhupada said, they're not first-class devotees. Those people, Prabhupada says, who first of all analyze Krishna. Is he God? What has he created? Can he do magic tricks? Can he juggle? How do we know he's really God? Prabhupada says, they're not first-class devotees. Those who have spontaneous love for Krishna, they are first-class devotees. So how can we study Krishna? It's not possible. Therefore, the Vrindavan status of mind is the perfection for the devotees. The Vrindavan status of mind is a perfection for the devotees. This is the goal of our life. This is our desire, to attain the Vrindavan status of life. And those devotees, they what is their characteristic? When some terrible thing happens, they don't become angry and blame Indra. They're too busy taking shelter of Krishna. They don't play the blame game, but they just absorb themselves completely in thought of Krishna. They're just wholly and solely dependent on Krishna. We've been listening to this wonderful song today by one of the most dear devotees of Lord Jagannath, Salabhega. And he wrote this song when he was in Vrindavan, and he was walking to Jagannath Puri, wanting to see Lord Jagannath. But he knew it was hopeless, because he's the son of Lal Beg, son of a Muslim. And he can't go inside of the temple. They won't allow him. Already he'd been to Puri before, and they said strictly, not, go away. We're not going to allow you inside. And so as he's going, he wrote this song, which is a very famous song today in Orissa, probably about the theme song of Orissa. Jagabandhu Hey, Jagabandhu Hey Gosai, Tumi Ami Binu Ana, Tumi Tu Charana Bandhu, Nahi Aragati. He said, other than your lotus feet, I have nothing. You're my only friend. You please help, even though it's impossible. You're Durgata Gatana Vidatri. You can make the impossible possible. So this is my prayer to you. So that's the Vrindavan conception, the Vrindavan status of mind. Prabhupada says it's not their business to understand Krishna. They only want to love Krishna without condition. They're not trying to understand him and poke him and prod him. Their mentality is not, because Krishna is God, therefore I love him. Krishna is not playing in Vrindavan as God. He's playing there as an ordinary cowherd boy. But at times, he's proving that he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the Hari Bhakti Suradoya, Lord Vishnu, who's known as Srimukh, who has the most beautiful mouth, and what he says is so auspicious, he speaks to Prahlad Maharaj. And he tells Prahlad, Sabhayam sambramam vatsa madgorova kritam tyaja naisha priyo nibhakteshu swadina pranayi bhava. Apine punakamasya navam navam idam priyam nishanka pranayad bhakto yan mam pashyati bhashate sada mukto pi badhosmi bhaktina sneha rajubi ajito pi jito aham avasya pi visikrita Chakta bandhu jana sneho mayam kurute ratim ekas tasyasmi sacha me nachanyo stavayo surit. He says that, my dear child, he says that you should sabhayam sambramam, you give up this fear of me. And sambrama, you should have this intimate relationship with me. He says, I don't like when people have this attitude and they're afraid of me. We don't like it either. When Anapaini was going to school, a little girl, I think she was terrorizing the other children in the school. They were afraid of her. And so some of them wanted to become friends maybe, and they came and they were shaking because she's such an angry, ferocious person. Please, may be your... But it's not pleasing. Ananta Gauranga Prabhu, Hare Krishna. Nice to see you online. Ujjala Rasiga Mataji. So Krishna tells Prahlad Maharaj, you give up this awe and reverence with fear, worshipping my greatness. He said, I don't like this. You should become independently devoted among my devotees. He says, although I'm full of my desires, I prefer that the devotee sees me and speaks to me out of affection without fear. And he says, Sada mukto pi badhosmi, although I'm always liberated, badhosmi, bhaktesu sneha rajubi, I become bound up, tied up with the rope of love of my devotees. He says, although I'm not controlled, I'm a jita, still I become controlled by them. Chakta bandhu jana sneho maya kurute ratim ekas tasyasmi sachame nachanyo stavayo surit. One who has affection for me gives up their affection for their friends and for everyone else. And Krishna says, I'm his and he's mine. And there's no friendship except between the two of us. In the Lalita Madhav, Krishna, on one occasion, he was chastised by Makara. Makara is a little blind, nearly blind, little senile grandmother of Srimati Radharani. And on one occasion, when she saw that Krishna was there with Radharani and the gopis in a lonely kunj, she started chastising him. And she told him, she shook her finger at him and she said, you black snake, you get away from my daughter. And Krishna at that time, he turned to Madhu Mangal, his Dhruv, his bosom friend. And he told him, Gokula kula jaratinam purushava api yata pramodayati stutir api mahamuninam madhura pada mam sakena tata. He said, you should know that this Gokula Kula Jaratina, Jaratina means the old ladies, it means babushka. These old ladies of Vrindavan, their harsh words, parashavag, apiyata pramodayanti. It doesn't please me. The Hare Krishna pronouns. He says that the prayers of the personified Vedas are not as pleasing to me as these angry words of the old ladies of Braj. Hare Krishna. On another occasion in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, when Krishna was speaking to Satyabhama about the love of the residents of Vrindavan, he told Satyabhama, Chittati chitrai, ruchirai viharai, ananda patodita rangamagna, nagnasina samratya dinani tani tatan mahamohana loka sangat. He says that when I was in Braj, I was enjoying these wonderful pastimes with the very charming people there. Ananda Pododita Rangamagna. I was plunged in such an ocean of bliss, I didn't understand. Rati Dinani Tani. I didn't know what was day, what was night. The days were just going by. Tadrik santosharna veham nimagno yena stotram kurvatam vandanam cha brahmadinam basane darshane cha manvano griham vasmaram devakrityam. He said, in this way, I was plunged into an ocean of happiness. And so much so, Brahmadinam Bhashane Darshani Cha, when I would see Lord Brahma, or I would hear him saying something to me, you know, Krishna, we have this meeting we have to have, organizational meeting, we have to talk about things in the universe. Krishna said, I just got great pain. I didn't even want to look at him. Go away. And he said, when the demigods started offering prayers to me in obeisances, it caused pain in my heart. And I forgot all about my mission with the demigods. And finally, Narad Muni had to come and say, excuse me, boss, you know, but you promised Paritanaya Sadhanam Vinashaya Chiduskritam Dharma Samstapanartaya. You have to go to the office. And at that time, Krishna left Vrindavan. In the Gopal Champu, in the 10th chapter, it speaks something about Uddhava's arrival in Vrindavan, and we've been speaking quite a bit about that for the last 4 sessions. It's our 5th session. And the astonishment that Uddhava experienced seeing the fathomless, unlimited love that Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda had for their Gopal. But the Bhagavatam describes in Gopal Champu that while all this was going on, there was some discussion going back and forth between Nanda Maharaj and Uddhava, as we mentioned several times. The first thing that Nanda Maharaj asked Uddhava was not about Krishna. Because Jiva Goswami explained that he thought, if I start speaking about Krishna, I'm just going to lose it. I won't be able to talk. I'm going to cry and cry. And so, with some parokshavad, and this parokshavad means some hidden double talk, and it wasn't even conscious on his part. But he first asked about Vasudeva and Devaki, who he said are Mahabhag. They're very, very fortunate. And Jiva Goswami explains that by saying that, he was indicating some of the feelings of his heart were coming out spontaneously. And he was feeling, we're very durbhagya. We're very, very unfortunate because Krishna has left. And so there's this conversation going on between Uddhava, this newcomer to Vrindavan, and Nanda Maharaj. And meanwhile, Mother Yashoda is just kind of sitting in the background, crying and not saying anything. Jiva Goswami describes that finally she couldn't control herself any further. And Mother Yashoda, she's like the personification, the abode of this vātsalya-prīti. Mother Yashoda, as we described in the beginning, She's a personified river of ecstatic parental love. So let's go to Gopal Champu and listen to Snigdhakanta and Madhukanta, who are speaking later on to the Vrajavasis about Krishna's amazing pastimes. And they say that Uddhava mabhitadvanita sutta charitra yashodapi svedastana drikshirai shariyam atra pagati mini saha. That when Nanda Maharaj began to speak about Krishna's qualities to Uddhava, and we heard how Nanda Maharaj, when he finally started speaking about Krishna, which was really on his heart, then he started speaking about the greatness of Krishna and how he killed the demons, and how Asura Jita, the Bhagavatam says, Sura Asura Jita, how he defeated Jita, both the Suras and the Asuras. He corrected the devotees, those demigods who were in management positions like Indra and Brahma, and the water god. And he corrected them, but he also smashed the demons. So Nanda Maharaj was speaking like that, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, because again he thought, if I start speaking about the sweetness of Krishna, then I'm just going to lose it. And then Uddhava told him, look, you got to get this off your mind. Just go for a walk. Go for a walk in the forest. Take care of the cows. You'll forget about Krishna. And Nanda Maharaj tells him, you really don't understand. You really don't understand. He said, wherever we go, we're reminded of Krishna. Every hill, every blade of grass, every tree, every cow reminds us of Krishna. And then speaking like this, Nanda Maharaj begins to remember the sweetness of Krishna. And when Jiva Goswami says that when Nanda Maharaj spoke like this, Abhitat Vanita Sutta, the Vanita Sutta, the glories of their child. At that time, Mother Yashoda, Charitradra Yashodapi, when she heard that charit, that those glories of Krishna, Svedastana Drikshirai Syad, she became very emotional. And Mother Yashoda began to sweat and perspire. She began to shake, and milk started pouring from her breasts, and tears started flowing from her eyes. And when Uddhava saw this, he thought, there's so much moisture coming out of her body. Her tears are pouring down her face. Her clothes are soaking wet from her tears and from the milk coming from her breasts. She's going to become a river. Mother Yashoda is a personified river of ecstatic parental love for Krishna. So up to this point, Mother Yashoda was quiet, but when she heard Uddhava and her husband speaking, she couldn't control herself. And this reminds us of a verse from Rupa Goswami's Lagu Bhagavatamrita, where he says that Sri Caitanya mukhodgirna Hare Krishneti Varnaka, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came and gave this Hare Krishna Mahamantra to the whole world. But how did he do it? He didn't do it by sending out emails and making one of those little picture things they do on Facebook with the Mahamantra there so everybody will click like and maybe they may share it with everybody. That wasn't his system. But Rupa Goswami says mukhodgirna, that from his mouth it came like a volcano. It wasn't a calculated gesture on his part, but he couldn't control himself. And it just started erupting like a volcano may stay peaceful for some time. But as the pressure builds up and builds up, finally it explodes and starts erupting. And this is Mother Yashoda, that personified river of ecstatic love for Krishna. Nanda Kishore Goswami also speaks about this in his Vrindavan Lilamrita. We can sing this and you can sing Hare Krishna response. He says, Shigra Udavirashtani. Shigra means very quickly. Shigra Udavirashtani Yashoda Asya Krishna Samvada Puche Kandiya Kandiya Bolo. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Hare. Govindavala, do you understand? Can you give a translation? Shigra Uddhava Stani. Yashoda Asya. Mother Yashoda very quickly came running to that place. Uddhava Stani, where Uddhava was. Shigra, she came running. Krishna Samvada Puche. And she began to ask about her Gopal. And Kandiya, what does that mean? Crying. She was crying and crying. Kahavapu kata dhure aise pranakanu sunite na pai kene chanda mukhe benu bolo. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. She says, you tell me, how far away kata dhure aise pranakanu? How far away is my prana kanu? What does prana kanu mean? Kanu is her nickname for Krishna. And pran means her life. How far away? You've come here. Does it mean my Gopal, my Kanu, is somewhere nearby? Kahavapu katudure aisi pranaka. Tell me. Shunitena paikeni chandu mukirvenu. She says, why is it? The sunite napai, why can't I hear the sound of his venu, the sound of his flute? Mama boli etakshana koli na aila, amare nidaya hoya kotaya rohila bolo. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. He was always calling Ma, calling me mother. But etakshana kolina aila, why isn't he calling me like this now? Amare nirdaya. He's become nirdaya. He's become very, very cruel. And he's not remembering his mother. Kahite rani ati arta hoya, Krishna Krishna boli dake bhumi te padiya bolo. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Kahite sang like this over and over again. Rani ati arta hoya, this queen of Vrindavan, she's a Rani, but she started becoming very, very agitated. And then calling out, Krishna, Krishna. Mother Yashoda, Bolidake, calling out that name. Bhumite Padiya. She fell down on the ground and she started rolling on the ground in front of Uddhava. Uddhava was a little astonished, a little surprised to see this. They don't behave like this in Mathura. He was thinking to himself. And so then at that time, Uddhava began to speak in a very sweet way to Mother Yashoda. Sunu Vrajavasis Mata Mora Nivedan, Krishna More Patahila Koriya Jatan Bolo. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Sunu Vrajavasis Mata. Please listen. And he addresses her as Vrajavasis Mata, not just Krishna Mata, but Vrajavasis Mata. You're the mother of Vrindavan. You're Vrajavasis, you're the queen of Vrindavan, but you're the mother of Krishna. You're the mother of Vrindavan. And if you keep rolling on the ground like this, you're going to make everybody very disturbed. Nobody likes it if your mother falls down on the ground and starts crying. Why do you have to be with this guy? That's terrible. Rolling on the ground. It makes you very, very depressed, isn't it? Huh? He says, don't worry. Krishna Mori Pataila Korya Jata. With great care, Krishna sent me to give a message to you. Tuya sneha bhasha Krishna pasarite nare sadatuya nam loya katara astare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. Tuya sneha bhasha Krishna pasarite nari. Krishna can't forget your love for him. Even if he tries, it's not possible. And sadatuya nama loy, he's always calling out your name. Krishna says, Sada muktopi badosmi bhaktina sneha rajabi. I become bound up by the rope of love of my devotees. Krishna promises in Bhagavad Gita, Yeyatam mam prapadyante tam sataiva bhajamyam. As someone approaches me, I reciprocate accordingly. In the Hari Bhakti Vilas, there's a verse that says, when you chant Krishna's name, Krishna chants your name. Krishna chants the name of Nanda Yashoda. And how often? Not just at the Sunday feast program, but Sadatuya Namloy. He's constantly, Katara Ashtare. He's constantly crying and calling out your name. Brajeshwari Mata Boli Koraye Rodana. Brajeshwari Pitta Boli Koraye Kandana. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Brajeshwari Mata Boli Koraye Rodana. He starts crying, Rodana, and calling out the name of his mother. And he starts calling out, Pita, Pita, and Koraye Krandana. Where is my father? And crying. Davali Shamali Boli Dake Gana Gane Shaniko He Nora Saka Gana Kontani He. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. And perhaps Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda are thinking, okay, you convince us, Krishna's thinking of us, Krishna loves us, but we're so insignificant. In their Dainya Bhav, they're thinking, we're so insignificant, we're so small, why will Krishna want to come to us? And then Uddhava assures him by saying, Davali, Shamali, Boli. Who's Davali and Shamali? One lady translated some of these verses for us, and later I went behind, and she translated Davali and Shamali is the name of some of the gopis of Krishna. It's a bad translation. Davali and Shamali were two of Krishna's favorite cows. He says, Davali, Shamali, Boli, Daki, Gani. Again and again, he's calling out the names of Davali and Shamali, these cows. He's missing them. Shanikai Mora Saka Gana Kontani. He's always calling out the names of the cowherd boys. In other words, Krishna's Uddhava is saying to Yashoda, it's not just you, but it's Vrindavan. It's the cows of Vrindavan. It's the boys of Vrindavan. He can't live without everyone. And it's very intense. Kahite Krishna, hoina murchita. Mora nama mate tanya dharya kori chitta he. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Kahite Krishna, hoina murchita. Krishna's calling out like this over and over again. Calling out the residents of Vrindavan market. Uddhava doesn't mention the gopis because he's a good messenger. This is Krishna's mother. It won't be very cool. If he talks to her about, Krishna will say, you told her what? Uddhava understands. You don't mention the gopis. Huh? He says, kahite, kahite, Krishna hoine murchita. Krishna's calling out like this again and again, and then he faints on the ground. Huh? And then with great difficulty, samadhaya kori chitta, we try to pacify him. Krishna gave me instructions. Kahiya chena Krishna mora matara charane pranati koriya jay kori beni bhagane Hare Krishna 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 Hare Rama. This is Krishna told me. Kayachina Krishna, Mura Matara Charani. Go to the feet of my mother. He didn't say you go and have some intellectual presentation, make a PowerPoint thing and get her to think about it. Actually, life's not so bad. Do some acts of listening and give her some psychological counseling. That's not going to work. Not with my mother. You don't understand her. You're an expert at those things, Uddhava. But you go to her feet, and you fall down to her feet, and tell her, Pranati Koriya Jai Kori Benivedan, that Krishna offers obeisances to your feet, and he offers his prayers as Nivedan. In the 46th chapter of the 10th canto, which speaks about this visit of Uddhava to Braj, the 29th verse, Sukadeva Goswami says, Tayaritam Bhagavati Krishna Nanda Yashoda Yo Vikshana Ragam Paramam Nandam Ahodavo Mudha. Uddhava then, with great joy, it said that Paramananda, with ecstasy, this Mudha, with great, great joy, then Uddhava began to speak to Nanda Maharaj. When he saw the intense love that they had for Krishna. And Jiva Goswami in Laghu Vaishnava Toshini comments on this, that the word vi-iksha, iksha means to see. Vi-iksha, the Uddhava directly saw this anuragam, this intense thirst of Nanda and Yashoda. We're thinking about Krishna and Balaram's condition. And he saw that they had this parama prema, they had this topmost love for Krishna. And Uddhava originally was speaking to Nanda Maharaj because he's the boss, he's the chief of the two there. And because Nanda Maharaj was doing all the talking, and Yashoda wasn't saying anything, she was just crying. She was just sitting in the background, like a Russian babushka who's thinking of her daughter who's gone to India or something, and she just cries and cries, my little girl, thinking like that. So Nanda Uddhava spoke, trying to console them. And the first thing he says, this is my subhagya, my great fortune, that I can see such ecstatic love. We don't have this in Mathura. They don't do like this. And he had so much ecstasy, so much happiness. But because Uddhava had this, his awareness of Krishna's opulence was predominant in him. So first of all, he appreciated the greatness of their anurag. Well, I've read about ecstatic symptoms. Yeah, you guys have really, this is really good. That was his first feeling. And he appreciated that, and not the portion of Nanda and Yashoda which is experiencing intense pain. But Krishna sent Uddhava, Jiva says, because he thought that Uddhava would be able, he wouldn't have sent him if he didn't think that Uddhava would be able to pacify them, even in their distress. So again, we spoke in several sessions about the qualifications of Uddhava, and one of which he was very, very gentle. Very, very gentle. So he's completely dedicated to Krishna. And because of those qualities, he got to see this ecstatic love. Sometimes I hear devotees say, so fortunate are the disciples of Srila Prabhupada, they got to see Prabhupada, they got to have such a thing. Oh, I'm so unfortunate, if only Prabhupada would come today, if only we could have someone like Prabhupada. But rather than thinking about demanding to see such a person, if we instead focus on our own qualification, and therefore there's a saying that Guru Mili Laki Laki Sishya Miliyak, that there's hundreds of millions of bona fide gurus. There's hundreds of millions of premi bhaktas. There's millions of times more premi bhaktas in the spiritual world than there are conditioned souls in this world. There's no lack of them. But the one thing which is lacking, Sishya Miliyak, you'll have a hard time even finding one bona fide disciple. So rather than worrying about who's qualified and who's not qualified, and taking your magnifying glass and trying to judge everyone, as Srila Prabhupada spoke in this lecture we were just reading from in Los Angeles about the Vrindavan state of mind. So that Vrindavan state of mind, they're not trying to judge Krishna. They simply love Krishna. In a similar way, if we simply love devotees, and how can we love devotees? Well, some of them are difficult to love. They're badmash, they're rascals. They act in ways which are not so appealing. But we love them because they're chanting the holy name, because they're dedicated to the mission of Krishna, the mission of Srila Prabhupada. And how can you not love someone like that? Huh? And there may be some things which are not so good, but durteki dandavat. We offer our obeisances from a distance there. But we can appreciate them. And if we have love for them in this way, then we may get to see who's a devotee and who's not a devotee. Here in Mayapur, there was one great devotee named Vamsidas Babaji, famous devotee, who was a little unusual. He would talk to his deities, and they would talk to him. On one occasion, I heard that Gornitai, his deities, were complaining. You never give us a bath. Come on, you should give us a bath. Okay, you guys are always complaining about everything. Let's go. And so he stuck Nitai under one arm, Mahaprabhu under his other arm. And he went out to the Ganga. And he got him, okay, now you satisfied? Give him a bath like this. And the devotees in the mutt, the Caitanya mutt, had heard about him from their Guru Maharaj Shiva Bhaktisiddhanta, such a great personality. And so sometimes they would bring offerings to him. But on one occasion, someone came with some offering, some fruits or something, and he started shouting at them and throwing things at them. And, Krishna, what do you think I need all this for? And he was a little, a little unreasonable, a little mad, a little crazy. And the devotees were afraid he's going to beat them up or something, and going to beat them. And they ran away, and they came back, and they told their Guru Maharaj, you told us this guy's a Mahabhagavat, but I don't know. He doesn't behave like a Mahabhagavat. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta forbade them. Don't go anymore. And there's only one or two devotees, disciples, that he would allow to go to see Vamsidas Babaji. So you can't see the devotees with our eyes. Darshan doesn't mean that we see, but it means the Lord and the devotees see us. And if we have a very gentle mood, and we're giving respect to everyone, and we love those devotees, because the devotees, it's such a special thing to be a devotee, then we may be able to see the greatness of those devotees. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in Sartha Darshan, in his commentary on this verse, he says that Uddhava was already familiar with some higher levels of prema. It's not really clear what Vishwanath means by that. I don't know, maybe he heard about that from Brihaspati. Brihaspati was speaking to him about Ujjal Nilamani or something, I don't know, or Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, or the roots of those books. Or because he had seen Vasudeva and Devaki in Mathura. He'd seen the ladies of Mathura who fell deeply in love with Krishna. He was familiar at least with some higher levels of prema, Vishwanath says. But now he's seeing Viiksha. Viiksha, he's directly seeing Nanda and Yashoda's intense love for Krishna. And he sees that both in quantity and in quality, the love that Nanda and Yashoda have was far, far superior to the love of Vasudeva and Devaki. Uddhava became ecstatic. And he thought, yes, now my life has become perfect. And he was very, very joyful. And Vishwanath says that Uddhava became ecstatic, even seeing their unhappiness, the anguish of Nanda and Yashoda, because that was just another form of their ecstasy. And in the 30th verse in this chapter, Uddhava says, Yuvam slagyat tamo nunam dehi namihamanada nadayane kila guru yat krita mata idrisi. Uddhava said, oh Nanda Maharaj, he says that slagatamo, slagatamo, slagatamo. You're very, very fortunate, you're very praiseworthy. Because of all the persons in this world, nunam dehinam, of all the embodied persons in this world, you have such a loving attitude. Narayana Kila Guru, to the Guru of the universe, Lord Narayan. That's your son. Jiva Goswami in Laghu Vaishnava Toshan explains that Uddhava, thinking, that he's been trained in active listening, in psychiatry, and counseling. He's a professional counselor. He's been trained by Brihaspati, the guru of the demigods, his guru. So the first thing that you do, you speak about philosophy. And so now he begins to praise the greatness of Krishna. He's thinking this will please Nanda and Yashoda. If I tell them how great their Gopal is. Because Nanda Maharaj said some similar things, right? Nanda Maharaj is speaking about how Krishna defeated both the demigods and the demons, and how Krishna killed so many different demons. So he took advantage of that, and he started praising him. And he was thinking that Narad Muni and others, they're very great personalities. They're even greater than the demigods. And then you have other devotees, Uddhava's thinking, like Vasudeva and Devaki. They're even greater than Narad Muni. But the people of Braj, he's astonished. They're the greatest of praise. And amongst the people of Braj, at least the ones that he's met so far, and in the next chapter, the 47th chapter, this 10th canto, we'll hear about the Brahmara Gita. And he's going to meet someone even greater, some greater devotees even than Nanda and Yashoda. But so far, this is like amazing. These are the most amazing devotees I have ever met. They're the best devotees, slagyatama. They're worthy of respect, manada. And he says, I'm giving all this respect to you because you're glorified by the whole world. You should know that Krishna, he's Bhagavan, he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. His shelter is very hard to attain, it's very excellent, it's very rare and auspicious. And you're very praiseworthy because you're taking shelter of that Narayan, who is even greater than the Lord of Vaikuntha. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his Sarta Darshani says that a similar thing, that amongst all the praiseworthy devotees in this world, Vasudeva and Devaki are the best. But now I've seen someone who are better than them. You are even better than because of your prema. Nanda Maharaj previously in text 23 of this chapter, he said that he understood that Krishna and Balaram were like demigods. And understanding that Nanda Maharaj appreciated this godly aspect of Krishna, then Nanda Maharaj is speaking about him in this way as Lord Narayan. And he's emphasizing Krishna's power. So I'm going to stop there. And in our next session, we're going to speak something more about Uddhava's words to Nanda and Yashoda and how he tries to console them and how he tells them even that Krishna's actually not your son. but he's a supreme personality of Godhead, so you shouldn't lament. And we'll look to this wonderful book, a collection of lectures from our Guru Maharaj called Mathura Meets Vrindavan, because Uddhava is coming from Mathura. And so his coming indicates the meeting of the attitude, of the mentality of Mathura and the attitude of Vrindavan. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, nice to see you. So we'll stop there, and I just want to go over and thank all the different devotees. Radha Priya Mataji from Hungary, nice to see you here. Brajendra Kumar Prabhu, wow. Pooja Jadika, Olga Gunchuk, and Malati Priya, Naveen Vijay, Brinda Sundari from Denver, Colorado. We were just speaking about you the other day, and the sacrifice you're doing with love for the devotees, serving the devotees by managing things, you and your husband. Naveen Vijay Prabhu, and someone named Ananta Garanga, who's like all-pervading because he wrote something on Facebook, but he's also present in the room right now. It's really quite amazing. Ujjwala Rasiga Mataji from North Carolina, and Yadu Shier, and Natalia from Estonia, and Kocha Machin, Dayanidhi Prabhu, Soumya Lalita Devi Dasi, and Janava Mata. My pranams. So if anybody has any reflections, as our dear Vaisheshika Prabhu would say, what did you get today? What did you purchase this time? What are you walking away with? It's very beneficial to remember that and contemplating that. So we have a few minutes if anybody has any reflections, or anybody here in the room. Pancharatna, do you want to add anything?
It's a reflection, and some questions involved. Because you were describing, well, how Uddhava was describing Krishna's feelings of separation, Krishna's mood of separation in Mathura. We hear about the intense feelings of separation and the love in separation of the residents of Vrindavan. But we don't often hear about Krishna's mood. That Krishna was also experiencing his love in separation when he was being in Mathura, being in especially in Dwarka. We have again, the eruption. You know, there were times when he couldn't hold it back, or when he was sleeping, it would come out. So it appears from these descriptions that Krishna was experiencing, as the Vrajavasis were experiencing their love for Krishna in separation, Krishna was experiencing his love for the Vrajavasis in separation. But it seems that was not enough, because he has to come as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in order to relish the love and separation that the Vrajavasis experience.
We were speaking a few days ago about a similar aspect of this topic, and how our Goswamis have answered the great mystery of Srimad Bhagavatam. What is the great mystery of Srimad Bhagavatam? Why did Krishna leave Vrindavan? And why didn't he return? Now, our acharyas have commented that in some very subtle ways, there's some indication that Krishna did return to Vrindavan. But you got to really look with a magnifying glass at the shlokas, otherwise it'll go right past you. It's not something which is emphasized very much. For the first time in the history of Vaishnavism, in the history of the world, our Goswamis revealed something which hadn't been revealed before. And that was Krishna's feelings to the gopis. His reciprocation, his feelings of separation from them. Again, Krishna's promise, Yeyatamam prapadyante tam sataiva bhajamyaham, that I always reciprocate accordingly with my devotees. So why is it that our Goswamis have particularly brought out this point? You may say it's a very interesting historical point. But as Pancharatnapa was pointing out, it's not just history for them. This is their life. Because Rupa and Sanata and Raghunath Das Goswami, Jiva Goswami, they're seeing directly Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so they're bringing this point out because this is Gora Lila. When Krishna says, Napari Ham Niravadya Samyajam, I can't repay my debt to the gopis, that indicates Gora Lila. And why is it so important for them to bring out this feelings of Krishna? Because unless we understand the feelings of Krishna, we can't understand Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And why it is that Krishna came as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He also had very, very intense feelings. But no one knew about it. And as my Guru Maharaj would say, Krishna was a theoretical speaker. He spoke about love. He spoke about surrender. Mamana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskar. Just meditate on me. Sarva dharmam pratyaga mame kam saranam braja. But he was just a theoretical speaker. And after Krishna left this world, he thought to himself, there has to be a practical example. Without seeing an example, it's not going to work. This is very, very important in the history and the life of any religion also. It's one thing for people to go to church, to go to the temple, to go to the mosque, but people need examples. In the Catholic Church, and they have saints. We also have our acharyas. We have different great devotees like Jayananda Prabhu and Jamuna and others who we remember and we worship. Because we need examples like that. Otherwise, everything becomes theoretical. Brinda Sundari Mataji in Denver, Colorado, comments, what stuck with me is the Vrindavan status of life. Mother Yashoda is being all wet from profuse love and being like a river. Uddhava's odd perspective witnessing Yashoda's expressions, and how each of these devotees hold perspectives about Krishna that facilitate their own individual personal relationship with Krishna. It's a beautiful comment. Thank you very much. A nice thing to walk away with. Anybody else have any reflections or thoughts on these topics? Anapayani, you have anything? Okay, why don't you come over here?
Thank you so much for the beautiful class. And thank you so much, Pacharatna Prabhu, that your comment awoke more thoughts from the This was so beautiful. Thank you. And I just was thinking also about the first statement which you told to us, that this Vrindavan statement of mind or life, how it's reminding how my Guru Maharaj, he often speaks that when we approach the Guru, what happens? So we have our reality of mind, and the Guru has another reality. And when we hear from here, it's actually how it looks like two realities, they come together, and they cannot. My reality cannot fit his reality, and that's why I start to ask questions and try to understand that. And it's I was thinking it's connected with how Uddhava, he comes to Vrindavan and he approached with his reality. Oh, I will tell them about Krishna, about his glories and things, but their reaction that they don't want to hear about this kind of Krishna and things like that. Like it's create disturbances in his mind which can help him to change it. And this was a plan of Krishna. I just was thinking about that. Thank you so much.
Wow, that's a beautiful, deep thought. Thank you so much. Uddhava, as we've commented some over the last few sessions, Uddhava is like the original book distributor. He's like the original preacher who sent on behalf of the Lord directly with a message to people. And just as Srila Prabhupada gave so much mercy to the devotees by having them go out and distribute books, which is something, strictly speaking, we're not qualified for. Unless, as my Guru Maharaj used to say, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta says, the real preachers are Vrajavasis. They're the real preachers. But it kind of, it's like jump starting a car or something. All of a sudden you pick up. Because by going out and distributing books, by putting ourselves in that position, then we're forced, unless you just want to suffer really bad, by thinking you're the controller. But if you go out there and you actually try to feel compassion, with living entities, and you try to see them as not being their body, then you're getting a crash course right away. And I'm not this body, and you're going deeper in empathy and compassion. Thinking about different persons is such a very, very beautiful thing. And so then by doing this service, just like Uddhava is doing the service for Krishna, his reality is going to merge with the reality of the Vrajavasis, and he's going to pick up their reality. Now, in the beginning of their discussion, he's trying to exert his reality. It's a very good comment. He's going to try to exert his reality on Nanda and Yashoda. But their reality is going to become much, much more powerful. And as Jiva Goswami is going to describe in Gopal Champu, Uddhava's reality is defeated. So this is because he got the mercy of Krishna, that he was able to enter into that other reality by doing this service. So Shushushoshodadana Vasudeva Kata Ruchi. We hear about this Ruchi from the Bhagavatam, how Uddhava had this taste. That taste comes because he's doing a service with love. And when we do a service with love for Guru, and we go out and try to do something which we're not qualified for, like Uddhava going to Vrindavan and speaking to the gopis and Mother Yashoda, it's way, way beyond his pay rank. He's way beyond him. But by doing that as a service, then his reality is going to change. And he's going to get the reality of Vrindavan. It's such a good comment. Thank you. Anybody else with any other reflections? Yeah.
Thank you so much. I love the questions and hearing the practice, like always very nourishing, very unique about your lectures. I had a reflection about Uddhava's spiritual master, Vrajavasis, and his level of realization. And I think that's something that I heard from Jani Maharaj, right? He was saying that the demigods have Vrajavasis as their guru, and what's his level, because of his level of realization, that's as much as they can develop. But Uddhava is way beyond Vrajavasis. This is my question about, does he have any, or Krishna is his guru now?
Yeah, it's a beautiful thought. It reminds me of Srila Prabhupada's famous purport in the 4th canto of the Bhagavatam, where he speaks about how Dhruva Maharaj took his mother, who was his guru, Suruchi, back to Godhead. And Prabhupada, in great humility, he says, I also hope that I'll have a disciple who is so exalted they may take me back to Godhead too. So the disciple, we were speaking about this before, this Vishrambena Guru Seva, and how the disciple is considered to be one with Guru. As Srila Bhaktisiddhanta says, the disciple is a disassociated particle of the Guru. He's a part of the Guru. When he actually comes to that point of making his heart one with the Guru. So part of Brihaspati is going to Vrindavan. and Brihaspati is getting great benefit from this. The guru-disciple relationship is not just like someone who teaches you how to work on cars or how to play mridanga or this or that, but it's a very, very deep relationship, the closest friendship. That the Bhagavatam in the 7th canto, Prahlad Maharaj, he prays that Gurudev is my surat, he's my greatest friend. We should have that attitude toward Gurudev. And we're going together. And I have this dedication to him. So Brihaspati is getting great benefit from Uddhava. We can confidently say that. Is that okay? Okay. Anybody else with anything? Okay, so we'll stop there. Now our next session on Apayani is, we're going to have, our next class is going to start at 12 o'clock.
Or about 12, right? Yeah, 12.
Okay, so on Friday will be our last class here in Mayapur. And we'll start it, and we'll continue the same discussion about Uddhava meeting Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda. And that'll start at Indian time, 12 o'clock. So I don't know how easy it is for people overseas. I think for a lot of you that's really not good at all. But you can watch the video or something if you like. And then we'll continue, then we'll be going to Puri on Monday, and we'll see what our schedule's going to be when we get there. I want to do some writing and things, so we'll have at least one class a week, I think. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Samveda Bhakta Vinda ki, Gopremanandi Hari.